All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Ecommerce Influence Podcast. My name's Austin Bronner.
And I'm Andrew Foxwell. And, we're talking about a perennial topic that we have talked about a lot today. Agency versus freelance versus in-house. And what do you do?
It's a philosophical discussion in the e-commerce world that I feel like happens all the time. And yeah, man, I'm excited to dive into it with you, and also excited to be back on video for those who have not. If you guys are listening to the podcast, we have a video version of this one on YouTube, which you can check out as well if you want to see us.
Yes, if you want to. I'm here in my in-laws' illustrious guest bedroom. Big setup. So, kind of doing some reconfiguration at home. So this is the best spot now. And let me tell you, this room is pretty fancy. So, I need to get some wall art in here. I think I'm just going to start decorating this on my own. And
we have clients in the wall art game. You can fill that thing up.
That's true. Really what I've always wanted is one of those that's like the whole scene of a wall that's like a lake with deer or something that's like really jarring.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Well, you wanted to talk about this topic today. Something came up. What was the inspiration for diving into this topic today for you?
Yeah, I mean, so this is a discussion that happens all the time, or a topic that happens often. What should I do? Should I take my ad dollars? And I'm specifically speaking of, let's just say Facebook, Instagram, and even Google, and kind of SEM type stuff. You could probably make the same case for email, but I'll speak about it through the lens that I know best, which is that Facebook and Instagram paid. And what do? Do I go to a freelancer? Do I go to an agency with these dollars, or do I go to build something in-house?
Yep.
And it got sparked because there was a tweet by a notable social person who tweeted.
Can we name names?
We don't need to name the name of this particular person, but it was basically saying agencies are trash. I used to be at one. And consultants are way better. It was the genesis of essentially what it said.
It sounds like a really good Twitter take.
Yeah, and it was a hot take. And in terms of like the strategy of like, the 90s Howard Stern, which is to say a bunch of crazy stuff and then make people talk about you, which is what this did. It worked. Because it was everywhere. This discussion was everywhere, and people oh hey, this and that, this is better, and there's nothing that media buyers love more than a good argument to make themselves look smarter. And so
here we are.
That's where this got kicked off, and I really got to think about it because it's never this simple, right? And never is this is simplified of like what's actually the best. And there is no best. It might be the best for you. It might not be the best for someone else. So in today's episode, that's what we're going to go into. That's what we're going to go into is kind of what are the pros and cons of this, and how do I make the decision? How do you make the decision? How do we think about it? How do you want to frame it up to actually get a clear answer?
Cool. Sounds good. And I think let's just say that the power of social media, this was so effective that we're actually now talking about it out of Twitter on a podcast.
Yes.
So that is the power of it. So let's dive into it. Let's dive into the three categories. You want to start with where would you like to start?
Well, let's go ahead and just start with talking about the benefits of working with an agency. Okay, so this is the most common thing I think that people go through, the benefits of, and what kind of questions do you want to ask if you're thinking about working with an agency. So from an agency thing, the first thing that in my opinion, why would you go to an agency? You'd go to an agency because you need the support. You need of more people than one person, really. You have probably multi-channels that you're running, or you have a lot of spend that you're running, or the complexities of ad buying are not something that you have the time to think about in the growth of your business. So those are like the big ones of like, why would you outsource, I guess, the big one. But an agency is really good if you have multi-channel, what you're doing is complex, you're spending a lot, meaning let's say north of maybe something like $50,000 to $75,000 a month on Facebook or Instagram. And then, do you have the time? Because to be honest with you, media buying today it's really time intensive. And a lot of what agencies are doing, and even consultants like us and other, a lot of what we're doing is generally looking at the landscape, trying and experimenting in an intelligent way, and like pulling levers basically. And you have to have that time to experiment. So that's kind of the first thing of like, why would you choose an agency over a consultant? A consultant is more nimble, and we'll get into that. But that's the agency benefits that you have.
You said 50 to 70,000 per month.
Yeah, I think so. Some people will say, "Hey, I have a lot less. I have a 30,000 a month, and I've outsourced that," and that's also totally appropriate. But that's where a freelancer may be better for you than an agency. And the reason I say this is generally across the board. If you look at agencies worldwide, and we have an agency referral network of about 27 agencies now throughout the world that are in all different. They're mostly e-com. And those agencies, I would say the average fees to manage the ads start at like, and these are good, they're part of our network because they're good and great at what they do. It started at like $2,500 to $3,000 in fees a month that are good, if they're good. So economically, if you're I had a guy reach out to me yesterday. Hey, Andrew, he had a 6-page plan of what he needed. Bottom number, total ad spend, Facebook, Google, and Instagram. $2,000 a month. I'm like, in spend. I'm like, you need to learn this yourself. And so, like that is a big part of it. And I think as you spend more, the complexities of having more people on the team is going to benefit you that way.
I think something to think about. This came from somebody posted in my community, the coalition. They were talking about one thing that they learned from running their business. And this guy was talking about, he runs a manufacturing business that sells products online. Mm-hmm. And at one point he was trying to buy a machine to be able to manufacture more of the product that he makes. It's a metal manufacturing product, titanium. And he said that he went to go talk to the manufacturer, and he was trying to figure out how to get a cheaper version of the machine that he needed to buy to create more of his product, right? So he was talking to this manufacturer, and he's like, is there any way I can do it cheaper? Could I create my own version of this? And the guy said, listen, if you are not able to purchase a new version of this machine at full price, the highest quality, there's something wrong with your business. It's the problem with the business model, right? Because you don't want to, I think the same way with the agency, right? If you can't pay an agency, it's not the agency's fault. It's where you are in your business is actually it's not the time for an agency, right? If you're only spending $2,000 a month, or you're trying to cut people down on their fees, there's a reason why the average fee is $2,500. Well, they're providing different resources to you. They're providing services. It's challenging to run an agency, and they need to charge the amount of money. And it's a red flag if they're not charging the amount that they should be charging, in my mind.
Yeah, right. Also, that's a great point. And I think that leads into what are good questions to ask agencies.
For sure.
Right? And the big one, from my standpoint, that you always want to ask an agency, there's a couple. One of the big ones is, how many accounts do each of your account managers run? Or another way to say it is how is your agency structured? Because the issue that ends up happening, that you and I have seen time and time again with agencies, Austin, is they grow aggressively and they try to add on too many accounts onto one person, and the quality declines. So it's this increase in quality. They are doing great and they keep hiring. And then that person is managing a lot of accounts. This person that I mentioned, aforementioned, about the tweet, they used to work in an agency, and they're quoted as saying that this agency, the account managers there managed upwards of 10 to 15 accounts or something. I mean, it was a lot. And in my opinion, if you're running an agency, your employees that are your account managers or whatever, if they're managing spends of $50,000 a month or higher, they should not be managing more than a maximum of 4 or 5, in my opinion. You just can't do it.
Well, too much.
you can't, I mean, even that might even be pushing it, but I think that's probably around the number. So that's the one thing you always want to ask, like, how is it structured? How many people are running it? How do you communicate? How do you want to communicate? Some people are, all over the place. I think it's important to understand, like, if they say to you something like, hey, we'll run, we'll talk once a month. To me, that's a little bit of a red flag. You want to have access to them and some of the thing that you're paying for, right? But you don't need to be talking to them every day. I mean, in my opinion, unless it's crazy, the amount of money that you're spending. And the other thing I always ask is like, can I talk to some current clients? And some people have pushed back on this, other agencies with me. I don't want to talk to current clients. We're under NDAs. That's okay, fine. But at least put them in touch with you have the questions be sent from the prospective client anonymously to the client and say, can you answer these for them? We're trying to grow our business, and give them a price break, your current client a price break if you're an agency, to answer those.
No, I will push back. That's a huge red flag. If they won't let you talk to a current or former client.
Right. I would say that's definitely a huge red flag. But my point is that I've heard some pushback on that, but I think there are creative ways to address that, because I think you should be proud of your work. So those are the big ones. Like, what do you do? How is it run? How do you communicate? And then, what's the way are people happy with you? And it should be like a no-brainer. It should be easy, because if you're good at what you do, you're like, yeah, no problem. Talk to these people. They love us,
Sure. I mean, for an example, right? If somebody wants to sign up and work with me in the Brand Guild, we give them the entire list. It's not cherry picked. If you want to talk to somebody, we'll say, like, we're so confident we will give you the ability to talk to anybody that we've worked with. It's not a cherry picked list. And then you can decide, reach out and say, hey, I want to talk to this person. They're kind of similar to me. We'll connect you and you can talk to them, because we believe that we provide really, really good service. So I push back on that. If someone's like, you can't talk, it's a red flag in my mind. The other thing, I think it's just partly the agency trap, right? Which is, people start an agency, and if you get caught in the mindset, if you start thinking, oh, maybe my agency's kind of like software, if you start running your agency like a software company, not understanding the underlying business model does not provide asymmetric returns as you scale, right? That's one of the challenges with an agency. You need to keep staffing as you grow, and people will never be able to go from having 4 accounts to 15 accounts comfortably. You might, as an agency owner, want that to happen. It's just not going to happen. And that's generally where I think, like, there's a challenge sometimes.
Well, I think it's important. I was just talking to an agency partner last week and about this topic and growth. And I think it's what he's done. This particular partner he has said he's actually gone and took my advice, and he went opposite. He said, I'm growing and I don't want to grow this fast. Stop. And he made the rules of the clients they're taking much harder, and he let go a bunch of people, and client wise. And he scaled back and was like, here's only the things we're going to do. And he gets rid of, like 90% of the leads that come through. He doesn't even have a phone call with. He's like, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Which is, in my opinion, the right way to do it. I think let's switch to talking about consultants or freelancers and why you'd look at a freelancer or consultant. If you're a brand that's spending any number of dollars on Facebook or Instagram, and you want somebody that's potentially more nimble, a freelancer is a great way to go. Or if you want to test the waters of working with somebody else, this is a good kind of transition potentially to an agency. If you've been doing it yourself and you're like, I'm curious what it's like to free up that time, handing that off to somebody that can take it off of your plate, that is more nimble, that's going to be more dedicated. There's probably one person that's handling, like I said, maybe one freelancer can handle maybe 4 to 5 to 6 accounts. It depends on the size of those accounts. Maybe they'll have 1 or 2 big ones, right? But I think that's the nimbleness that you can get, and potentially it's less costly. But if you start asking questions about email, or if you hire a Facebook person, people ask us about email. I'm like, honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. You need to take Austin's email course, or talk to someone else. Like, it's not something and so that's the limitation, is that the minute you want to try to do something else, it can be a challenge. I don't know. What do you think are kind of the benefits of freelancer consultants, things like that?
So what you said, the ability to kind of feel a little bit like an extension of your team. We employ, we have 3 or 4 freelancers on our team at any one time that kind of feel like an extension of our team, but therefore instances that we don't need a full-time person. We have a freelance video editor, a freelance podcast editor. We have a freelance web developer. We have a freelance graphic designer. And they all kind of feel a little bit like an extension of our team, but we don't need a full-time version of any of them. So it works for both of us, right? And that works quite well. I think what you mentioned, one of the challenges can be questions I would ask are, at what level in the pecking order is my company in the size of your clients?
That's a great, right. Relative, I mean, how much attention am I going to get? Yeah.
Yes. That can be really, if one client is 80% of their ad spend and then you're in the 20%, that can be kind of tough because you're going to be second fiddle in many ways. Other things I would think about, and I'm talking about this in terms of I like hiring freelancers, not based on, partly based on referrals, but more based on quality of work. So in the hiring process, having tasks that involve actually doing the projects before hiring and like a paid test task to learn, hey, can they do this before I hire?
Sure, that's a good idea.
That tends to work better for me, where ultimately, what it comes down to is I don't need someone to interview really well. I need them to do the job really well. And
sure.
And that's something I look at from the freelancer side.
You could even pay them to do an audit or something, right? Before.
That's the best way. The best way. Pay if from a Facebook side, pay them to do an audit and maybe even pay to get started a little bit, or design an ad to see if it matches up with the way that you work. I think communication is a big challenge.
Yeah, the thing that you don't want to do that I have seen, I'll just call out really briefly now that I'm thinking about this, is you don't want to pay them to run ads that'll compete against yours. That's something I was like,
that's a terrible idea.
I have ads running. If you beat my ROAS, I'll hire you. Super dumb because you're cannibalizing your own results. So never do that. Just if you're going to let them do it, get an audit first or whatever, but don't have them competing against one another.
And you can see why that could people could think that's a good idea, right? Without
in theory, it's what it seems like. Oh yeah, but it's actually going to decrease your results.
Yes,
generally.
I also like to ask the question, what are your long-term goals, right? And make sure that you're aligned, because I have clients that they burn people out because they are really, really intense and they've got really intense growth goals. And this person doesn't, you need to align with that and make sure that the freelancer understands hey, we're on a rocket ship right now and we work crazy hours. In the short term, we're going to be working crazy hours. So are you ready? Is that something you want to sign up for?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it absolutely is a good point. I think the other one that I want to mention briefly is this idea of in-housing, right? Bringing somebody in-house to do it, which I've seen to become more popular recently. People feel that it's better to, it's just don't build, on rented land, right? It's build it internally and have a media buyer internally. And I certainly think that's a good option if you plan to have someone that is going to be a point person long term on paid media, and even that person could turn into managing an agency down the line. I think that what I've seen is a lot of organizations and brands, they try to find a senior media buyer to fill that position, and let me tell you right now, hiring for a senior media buyer is really challenging because we posted a thread 2 days ago in our Facebook group, the Facebook and Instagram Pro Ad Buyers group, and we hiring, just who's hiring. And we had something I think we already have maybe 30 responses of people that are hiring for this job. And so you're better off finding someone that has light social media experience, in my opinion, training them with our courses or other courses and building that person up over time. I'm convinced if you listen to back episodes of the E-commerce Influence podcast and bought like 3 courses from different people online, I think you could be well on your way to being a good buyer, baseline. And so that's another good option. The issue is just don't try to hire someone that's going to cost you $100,000 plus a year or more, right? Like hire someone that's going to be less expensive with less experience that you can train and groom into the media buyer the way that you want to think about it. I've seen that mistake happen. People say, still have that media buyer job opening and they're stuck with this agency that they don't like. And I'm like, you can solve this faster than I think you can.
And to dive into that even a little bit more, one other reason is that there are different things that work for different companies and different styles. And I've seen this where whether it's an agency, freelancer, or in-house, you go from somebody doing it in one style that works very specifically for them, and they hire somebody who has a lot of experience, like quote unquote, a better media buyer. And I think they actually are a better media buyer, right? They hire a better media buyer than they are. And it just doesn't work because that business has a very specific way of having success on paid social, for example. And right. It's like,
that's
whoa,
so true.
This person comes in with 5 years of experience. They've spent millions of dollars and they can't figure it out because this person has this really interesting way that they've designed and built their company. And so back to the in-house side of things, I think it could be more effective if you bring somebody in, have them learn your system, and a creative person, they first learn your system so they can continue to push that system forward. And then they take the courses, they take the other things, they bring from outside in and test some things out. Because from a business owner's perspective, it's like, what do you really need? You're running your business. You're running out of time, so you can't dedicate as much time to Facebook and we're talking about Facebook and Instagram, paid social right now, but this works for almost everything. You need someone to come in and replicate at least 80% of the results you're getting initially, right? That's the idea. Like, okay, let me get my time back. We'll continue to have success. And then from there, if you have the right person who's hungry, creative, and wants to do a good job, they can listen to this podcast, they can take some of your courses, they can join the coalition, they can get all the training that they need to come in with fresh ideas and try things on top of what you're already doing to improve your results.
Yeah, I mean, even if you hired a media buyer and you just gave them access to the coalition, there'd be more than enough to train them till the end of time there, in my opinion.
If they're the right person, right? If they're hungry, and they want to learn it.
I think it's interesting. I think so. Let's wrap it all together a little bit, which is, so you're thinking about what do you want to do? I think some of it's based on spend. I think some of it's based on what the long-term goals of the company are. I think some of it's based on the flexibility and the needs of what you feel you need. And if you start to sit down and say, I really need someone that can handle more than what we're doing, not just paid social, but I need someone that's going to be doing more creative. It's going to be potentially doing some email. It's going to be, that's to me more of an agency discussion. Or that's a freelancer that freelancer, you are then their main client if you're going to ask them to do more than one thing. And I think if you want to long-term build a marketing person in-house, then I think it may be in-housing is the way to go there and training somebody up over time.
And you can fall into a trap, and I highly recommend not falling into this trap, that getting kind of greedy with what you like. It's very hard to find one person who can do everything. Absolutely. It's very hard to find an agency who's good at doing more than like one or two things, to be perfectly honest. So rather than it's your responsibility. You need to be responsible as a business owner to check your own desire to and you're most vulnerable when you're most busy. To check your own desire to want to abdicate responsibility for success on a marketing channel to somebody else, And the reason why agencies are so easy to grow is because it's a very good value proposition where it's like, hey, we will take care of everything for you. All you need to do is be the business owner. That's why your friend is slowing down the growth of his agency and trying to find the right clients versus speeding it up. It's much easier to grow by just promising everything because people want to feel it. Here, and my big takeaway is just like time horizon and sophistication of your marketing. Right? If you've got a long time horizon, then I love training in-house because the return on that is going to be really, really high. And if you can actually go through the process, like do not shortchange your hiring process.
Yeah, I mean, I think hiring, if I'm building a company today, to me, the thing that I'm doing is I'm probably initially going to work with a freelance consultant. Over time. I'll then hire in-house and have that person in-house be the captain of it all. And then eventually move into have that person working directly with an agency, because I don't want my marketing person long-term to be pulling the levers. I want my marketing person to be the CMO that's saying, do this, and holding them accountable. And if you look at the biggest companies that I've worked with, GoPro, Square, Kind, that's the kind of stuff that they have set up. They have digital operators that understand deeply that side of it and can say to the agency, pull these levers, and they don't have to spend the time doing the execution, but they're working with them to set the strategy, which I think is different for everybody, but that's what I would do.
I think that makes sense. I think the one distinction between Kind and GoPro and some of the other companies that I work with, a big distinction to think about is what are you fundamentally? Are you a marketing company? Are you a manufacturing company?
Right.
GoPro is a product company.
Right.
So they don't need to have a marketing in-house. I've worked with a decent amount of companies that their core function is marketing.
Right.
And if your core function is marketing, I think you're going to struggle at a high level having an agency if you're spending $1 million a month on advertising.
Sure.
And your core function is marketing, like you're like Kylie Jenner, right? That's their core function. They're a marketing company.
Yeah.
So they built an in-house agency to be able to.
Right.
And so, but getting clear about your business and what your core function is really, really important when making this decision. And you could be fooled and think you're a product company, but actually you're a marketing company. And you could be fooled and think you're a marketing company and actually be a product company. Just get clear about that.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. I feel like this was actually a really awesome discussion.
Oh, it was. I love this. I mean, again, this is a conversation we have all the time. So,
yeah, absolutely.
We're coming down hard on the side of nuance.
Exactly.
Today.
Which I think is important.
So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. And if you like this episode, head over to ecommerceinfluence.com, check out the website, or go to iTunes and write us a review. It'd be great to get a 5-star review if you enjoyed this episode. We'll talk to you guys soon.